Well, thank you so much for having me. Hope I'm not standing in the way of lunch, so it won't take too long. Seriously, cut it off. My name is the K there. So we talk about open hardware approaches for laser scanning microscopy, and I'm kind of representing the science field that has historically been very good at sharing software. And we try to share everything in the papers, but usually in the papers is very strong on what the samples are and what commercial microscopes you did. But if you get in the world of home built, at most we give you a parts list. And we're really finding that we've got to go beyond that. So thanks to this fellowship, that's what exactly we're trying to explore is how can we be more open in sharing the complete system, not just the methods. And so my lab for sometimes is very involved in open source software. You may have heard of MSJ or Fiji. These are software for over 20 years with thousands of users, and we're really committed to that. But in our research, when we try to look at how you visualize things like cancer and other kinds of phenomenon, it goes beyond the software. You need the hardware. And that's where we're not as strong. We build in our community these systems, we publish papers on them, but that's usually the extent of it. Usually you publish a PDF, and in there you might have a picture of your instrument, you might have a description in text, but it wouldn't really help even an experienced builder build it. You're missing a lot of content. And so that's been our challenge, is how can we be more open, because we're all building on each other. We're all helping. The innovation is all based on people's work, like all of you, and how can we be more open in that sharing? So this is typically what you see in our field. Many of you recognize if you're working at now or from college biology, the classic, oops, I did not mean to do that. Okay, don't let Kevin press buttons. All right. But as he gets it back, so the one on the left is the instructional microscope, the kind of the classic microscope. The one in the middle there is the commercial microscope. Maybe I could do it. Oh. Someone know how to restart this? There's a button here. And then the one on the right is basically our home built setup. And so we were trying to basically see how we can share the one on the right. There you go. Thank you. All right, I won't press that button again. And so you can see the complexity on the right, but that complexity really leads to function. And we want to share that design of all those parts with others, but just capturing what the model will make is not enough. Is expertise in how you build it and put it together. And so that's what this fellowship is about. And so we're really committed to building systems for innovation. Home-built microscopes are really what drives the field in cancer and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And these lead to open innovation, but also lead to companies. So a lot of these open hardware eventually become part of companies as well. And so we need to share between research groups, and the actual hardware details are often very scant. So how can open hardware practices help us here? A few things got cut off in this best guy. And so we're very into how can we share our software and make it available using off-the-shelf electronics and optics. And we want to share it with others. And traditionally in our lab, we've just done it in papers and help others on campus that know us, but how can we go beyond that footprint? And so this just shows the beauty. I find this beautiful. It probably looks ugly to you, but this shows 6 of our systems, 5 that we have actually already upgraded to this open scan system that I'll describe in a second. That's a mixture of home-built hardware and software controlling it. 1 we're purposely delaying to the end so that we make sure that we have a fresh build to document our process. But we're basically trying to share this around the world, others, and there are at least 100 other labs that are in this exact area as us, so sharing that. And so we want to be able to share the source code for optical builds. We want to basically make available some sort of format that would allow others to customize and share with others. And just saying you're going to put widget A here, widget B here is not enough. So how to share that build process and how to build on it is very important. And we want to really think about how source code can be integrated and facilitated in design development, and how you can actually share a design engineering principles similar to what we do in software. So as you heard from the earlier talks yesterday, there's a lot we can learn from software engineering best practices, and how can we apply that to hardware. And we really want to make it easy to share and reshare with others. And so this shows one of our earlier efforts called OpenSPIM. There's an international collaboration with Max Planck in Germany. And at first glance, it might look pretty good. If you look here on the far right there, you can see the build system. You can see all the parts coming together. In this case, it's an open source light sheet microscope. But there's bad news. So over 50 labs built this, perhaps even a little more, but they got quite frustrated because if they wanted to modify or share, they couldn't. The little secret is that movie was done manually with someone videotaping it. So every time they made a change, it was a very manual process. And so that's why it hasn't really been upgraded or changed in over 5, 6 or more years. And so how can we have something that community can give feedback on and iterate and modify as part of the challenge, rather than just a pretty product that is not shareable and editable by the community. And so we have this wide spectrum, the typical maybe OpenSPIM-like approach where you might have this very documented build for teaching is great for training and sharing modifications, but it's very labor intensive, less modular. And then you have the more flexible system. We have the separation of builds and allow you to substitute parts. And it's really great for it's really suitable for cutting edge R&D. And it requires expertise, but it's often not known before you start. And so we're trying to figure out what is the expertise to capture in our system so you know what's required. Similar if you're a chef and you read a recipe, you know what a blanching is, you know these terms. In our field, we do the same thing. And so we need to figure out how to capture the expertise you need to go going in and the expertise as you build. And so there are challenges in documenting complex assemblies. How do you effectively document the assembly process without resorting to that brittle, labor-intensive process I showed earlier? How can we make it something that's more organic? And how to visually present a build. And we've looked quite hard with the help of our mentors, Chris Chronopoulos and Ginger Zhang. We also posted on the listservs. We haven't really found anything. So I'm going to describe our efforts to try to help build something, but we want something and capture the process. And so we want to be able to describe and document complex builds in an adaptable manner. You want to identify all the techniques. So similar to a recipe, what are all the components that you would need? Procedures, subroutines, recipes for assembly. For example, we assume to build our system, you know how to align a laser. That doesn't necessarily mean you do. So how do we capture that and identify that skill set is there or missing? And that's true of a lot of other fields, right? Where you expect some existing expertise. Just because you're so focused on your own field, you forget people new coming in. And then how do you clarify dependencies between system components and their assembly? How do you document the process? And how do you try to clarify what is needed, where it's needed, and how to reduce the work when you make a change. So if I made a change to the recipe, I substituted, eggs for egg substitute, making that clear. And then how do you share it in an easy edit format? We're proposing Drupal Notebook and GitHub Pages. We're open to other suggestions, but that's our active work now. And although we're focusing on optics, we suspect this is applicable to many other fields, right? The idea that you have many parts coming together, and how the parts come together is just as important as the parts and the expertise that is needed to build the parts, but also expertise that we're assuming you have. Very similar to a chef, you assume they have some existing skill sets in your recipe, and how do you make that clear? So we think this is a general idea. And so this led, I apologize, a few things I cut off in this slide, but Chris Chronopoulos, who's one of our mentors, he's at Allen Institute, and he is very involved in open hardware as well. He's very interested in this, so he went from being a mentor to a collaborator. So we're working actively on this, and we plan to continue this past the life of the grant. And we're writing a perspective paper. It's a white paper that's also an active effort. And anybody that's in the room interested in partnering or talking to us, please do. But how can we, kind of a call to force, come up with a system that could actually deal with complex assemblies? And so basically, this is a white paper, a process investigating what it would take to design a system that could actually describe complex assemblies, like I talked about, and have methods that could display and manipulate modular assemblies of components. So going beyond, right now we just have big groupings of SolidWorks files. How can we go beyond that and describe the process of putting them together? Okay. Well, a few of my slides got cut off, so that's a gentle hint. But people know me, so I talk too long, I guess. I had some slides that got cut off there. Oh, there you go. All right. So finalize our OpenScan software release. We want to publish the software paper. We're trying to also fully implement OpenScan, both in our lab and other labs on campus. And then we've also identified 2 outside groups. One's already started on campus. We actually purposely brought over a student from India that was supported by this. That was an optics student that approached us, and we thought she was ideal because she represented, like, I think I'm going to be way shorter than that. So a few slides are missing. But basically, wrap up student training. So we have brought over a new uninitiated optics student. So they had some optics training, but never heard of laser scanning microscopy. And they've identified a lot of deficiencies in our training and process, some brand new. And then we want to finish the prototype of our current system and then get these two papers submitted. And it looks like a couple slides are missing. So the last two slides were just to be very grateful to the community, to Oshawa, to the great team, the Sloan Foundation, our two mentors. And so we're very grateful for all the work. And we've learned a lot, as open source software folks in our lab. For some time, we've been building open source. And we like to think we were doing open hardware because we'd released the plans for our microscopes, but we really realized we weren't. That just putting something in a PDF and saying, hey, we built this, here you go, we really realized is not open. And part of the reason we realized that is my lab is all student-based. And many people, some great scientists like Mark Tsuda here, who was on my thank you slide as well, work on this work, but they graduate, they leave, and there's changes. So if you look at those 6 earlier pictures, we went back to try to document with this visiting student from India what was going on. We realized in our own lab, we couldn't reproduce it, right? And so part of being truly open is capturing the expertise and memory of a system, and we were missing in that. So we think our field needs to go beyond in our journals and articles of just being open hardware by saying, hey, this is a plan on paper. Here's the parts list you need to build it, and describing the parts, which is almost all we ever do in the microscopy world. We got to go beyond that. And so that really led to this idea of trying to capture the process of the complex assemblies and the expertise that is needed. And I'm very grateful because we wouldn't have been able to go down this road if it wasn't for Oshawa. So with that, I will end and let you guys get lunch.